In this video, we're going to have a closer look at LangChain Agents and understand what agents are all about. First, we're going to dive into what an agent is and understand how agents work under the hood of LangChain. Then we're going to have a look at what we can do with agents that we couldn't do before and some of the future implications for businesses that are already investing in technology, data, and analytics. And finally, I'm going to show you how to get started building your own custom agents. I'm going to have GPT-4 access data from an external API. And you can use this example as inspiration for building other types of agents. In order to understand what a LangChain agent is and what we can do with an agent, let's have a look at an example. Suppose you're building a chatbot for an e-commerce business. This could really be any type of B2C business, but e-commerce is easy to understand. Right now, businesses around the world are already using GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 to build chatbots. We know that GPT-4 has great general knowledge, but it's severely lacking when it comes to your own data. GPT-4 doesn't know anything about your products, for instance. We have seen in earlier videos how we can solve this using LangChain and vector storage. We slice and dice the product data and put that into a database like Pinecone or Redis, and then we have the language model access that data. So now the chat model knows about your products, which is better than before, but it's still not good enough. Because what does a chatbot really need to know in order to give the customers a good customer experience? The chatbot needs to know stuff about the customer. If this chatbot is on a web page, it needs to know the context of the visit. And this could be information like, is this a new potential customer or an existing customer? Or what is the browsing history of this visitor? What products do we recommend based on purchase history or browsing history? All this information needs to be made available to the chatbot at runtime. And this is information that will help a language model with the customer interaction and ultimately help the business convert the customers and generate more sales. This information can be made available to the chatbot or the language model through microservices by letting the language model access these resources of computation and information through APIs. In LangChain, connectors to APIs and computational resources are called tools, and agents are what we get when we combine a language model with one or more tools. By combining a language model with a set of tools, we are empowering the language model to solve specific problems, much in the same way that a regular person would use tools like Python, Excel, or data tables with information to solve a specific task. In the last video, we saw an example of a LangChain agent when we communicated with the Zapier Natural Language Action API in order to send out personalized emails based on product reviews. If you've played around with the Zapier example or any other agent, one thing you might have noticed is the way an agent is going about solving a specific task. It continuously loops through steps of action, observation, and thought. And this is the way that the type of agent that we used in the Zapier example is built. The logic behind the agent comes from the React framework, which essentially means that we enable the language model to take actions in the form of text and verbally reason about those actions in an interleaved manner. The actions lead to feedback in the form of observations, and the so-called reasoning traces affect the internal state of the model to support future actions and future reasoning. The React framework is what powers the zero-shot React description agent and the React doc store agent in LangChain. And if you take a look at the base agent class, you can see how this framework is being implemented. If you're interested in learning more about the React framework, I suggest that you take a look at the paper. I'll put a link to that below, as well as the accompanying blog post by the Google Brain researchers behind the paper. So let's zoom out for a moment to understand why LangChain agents are such a big deal. We can list out the different channels a business uses to communicate with their customers or potential customers, and we have 5 main channels. So the 5 main ways businesses communicate online with their customers are through paid and social media, their web page, chats, email, and SMS. The online customer experience is primarily created in those channels, and is controlled by text, images, and video. The text part can be generated by language models, and businesses are already working on using ChatGPT for this. The images and the video will also be created by AI, and companies are now working on using Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and ControlNet for this. Let's forget about the images and video part for now. We'll get back to that in later videos and just focus on the language modeling. We talked about before that the language models don't know enough about the customers in order to create a good customer experience. In order to create a good customer experience, the language models need to access customer data, both the raw customer data and the processed customer data that comes out of analytical services. So we need to give the language model access to churn and retention scores, to segmentation models, to product recommendations, and to customer journey analytics. Unfortunately, companies have been developing these services for 5 to 10 years now. And these analytical services can now serve as tools for the language models. So we get to connect the old world of analytics, which is not really old, with the new world of AI using LangChain and agents. So now let me show you how easy it is to get started building custom agents that allows us to do stuff like this. I'm going to take a Python function that can extract any type of data from the Shopify API and turn that function into a tool. And then I'm going to create an agent out of this tool and GPT-4. And this agent allows us to have a language model interact with the Shopify API. In order to write the code for this example, we're going to need the Shopify API Python library. We need LangChain, OpenAI, Pandas, and .env. Access tokens are put in an environment file, and I'm going to put a link to a notebook with the code below this video. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to load the needed libraries. I'm going to load the environment variables. And here we have the Python function that will extract the data from the Shopify API. It takes an object name as input that could be customers, orders, or products, and it extracts 250 items. I've already covered how you get the access token to extract the data from Shopify in an earlier video. I'll put a link to that video below this one. And let me just show you how it works. I'm going to extract some customer orders using the order object. And I could do the same thing for customer or product or anything that the REST API allows me to retrieve. And our goal is now to take this function and turn it into a tool that we can use to create an agent. And to do that, I'm going to import structured tool from LangChain. And I'm also going to import chat OpenAI and instantiate GPT-4. Now I'm going to take the getData function, I'm going to wrap it in a function that takes a string as an input and returns a string. I call this function getShopifyInsight, and then I use structured tool to create a tool out of this Python function. And this tool can now count the number of items returned as a string for each of the Shopify objects you're trying to extract. And we can call this tool with any of the objects in the same way we can call a function. So we can call it with order or customer, product, and it will return the number of items as a string. And now we have everything we need to define the agent. And the language model, in this case GPT-4, will seek to infer what it needs to do with the tool from the signature of the function. So we're going to define an agent chain by initializing the agent with the tools, in this case just one tool, the chat model, and the agent type. And now we can ask GPT-4 to count the number of orders, customers, or products, or whatever in the Shopify store. And again, we see the React framework behind the agent. The agent takes an action, there's an observation, and a thought after the observation. And we see that it actually counts the number of items for this particular object, in this case, the number of orders. And we can do the same thing for customers or anything that the Shopify API allows us to retrieve. So pretty basic example, but this was just to show how you take a Python function that manipulates something or extracts something from an API, combine it with a language model like GPT-4 and turn that into an agent. And of course, this is going to get a lot more interesting once we start developing some really good tools for the language models. That's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.